has 4 Rebel Masters, 3 Seeker of the Waves, and 1 Soulfire Grandmaster. Now, it looks like this is the same deck that a lot of the Roanoke crew playing, Todd Anderson, Brad Nelson, I think even Tom Ross is lumped into that group as well as playing this Jeskai Tokens build. Gonna see how it stands up against what is just one of the best decks, if not the best deck, in our standard metagame, at least previously. We'll see how much better it got here with Dragon's Dark here. Of course, I was on mid-range.
Well, you always have to wonder how this matchup is going to work out, because I think going into, going into Dragons of Tarkir, Abzan mid-range and Jeskai Tokens to me were the two probably most powerful stand-alone decks as far as what they do. You know, they're going to be a safe choice just because they do something really good. The matchup was close, you know, depended on some cards that each player would play. And you always want to wonder, okay, has the balance in this matchup shifted with the new set? That's a really important question to answer, especially if you're playing in large tournaments like this.
Now, Cruse's build of this deck, we saw during Fate Reforged where Sylvan Caryatid got cut from the deck. He actually has 4 copies in his deck this weekend. So I'm doing the check here now for End Hostilities, which that was kind of the shift that people made. They cut Caryatids, they added Hostilities. You're not going to find Hostilities in the main deck here. New cards you will find, however, a Sidisi Undead Vizier, and you'll also find a copy of Ultimate Price hiding out in here. And, ooh, we also have a Dromoka's Command. So, Will with a little spice.
Yeah, I mean, Dromoka's Command, that card has been, I think, has seen some hype, and I wouldn't be surprised to start to see it show up in more of these Abzan lists. I'll be interested to see how it does in something like Will's deck.
Both players underway here for game number 1 of round 3 of our Season 1 Invitational. Will doing some scrying with a Temple of Silence. Brian's going to sacrifice a Flooded Strand. He started off with a Mystic Monastery. Don't know if these are the most played decks in the room. We will, of course, get that information from Nick Miller and Ken Crocker in the sideboard once we do have a metagame breakdown for you guys at home. But Jeskai Tokens so far amongst the name players are very popular.
Yeah, Jeskai Tokens, I mean, it's once again one of those decks that I think is standalone powerful, and certainly its strong draw. When this deck works, this deck feels great to play with.
Feels sometimes unbeatable, honestly, as Brian is going to play a Soulfire Grandmaster and pass the turn back over to Cruse. Cruse will take a draw step. You see he does have an Elspeth in his hand. He's got a small Planeswalker package going on in here. 1 Sorin, 1 Elspeth, 1 Garruk, 1 Ugin. So a little of this, little of that.
Yeah, he certainly is on the more proactive game plan. He's not this control deck. You see playing 4 copies of Sylvan Caryatid, 3 copies of Whisperwood Elemental, and a Sidisi. He's really trying to ramp into these 5, 6s, and 7s.
Sidisi is a card I know many are interested in. It's clearly a powerful card. 4/6 Death Touch is great against opposing Siege Rhinos, of course. Good against opposing creatures. Looks like Ultimate Price is going to take care of this Soulfire Grandmaster. Brian going to play a land very quickly here. We'll see what the follow-up is. It'll be a Hordeling Outburst, so 3 Goblins coming. But Sidisi allows for you to actually do this kind of one-of thing that Will is doing in his main deck. That's why you're going to be able to find these one-of Planeswalkers, maybe some different one-of removal spells. And when we get to the sideboard, you'll find some one-ofs there as well.
What might be interesting is because Will is going for a more threat-oriented Abzan deck, he has cut down on cards like Bioblade. He only has 2 copies of it. Maybe trying to go over the top of something like Hordeling Outburst as opposed to just trying to 1-for-1 it.
That's an interesting price that you pay, right? Ultimate Price is certainly a really, really good card, and it's actually easier on the mana, too. Bioblight is really good against this particular deck. Now, it can actually be better depending on the build of the deck, too. Imagine if Brian went with Dragon Fodder and then into Hordeling Outburst. Then Bioblight's great.
Yeah, there certainly is a price to playing Ultimate Price, as we're going to see here.
I'm going to let that go.
Oh, you set that one up.
I did. I let you knock it out of the park. Brian with his 3 Goblin tokens. Pretty easy to start the turn by attacking, but he will think things through on his 4th turn of the game. And what's been a lot of fun to watch during this tournament is just the amount of thinking that players have done because they have to weigh so many different cards into the equation now. Watching Dylan Donegan in the first round when he was playing against Kenan Haas, he had to think about so many different things because Haas was just playing a different deck than anything we've seen before. A Jeskai control deck that had Ojutai's Command and a bunch of other stuff going on. Brian against 3 open mana, and he knows Abzan really well. It could represent a lot of different things now where it didn't before.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of there's no shortage of playable cards in Abzan colors. And I think because of that, you're right. You don't really know what to play around.
We have an Anticipate here. This seems like a card that you would like casting.
I like this card quite a bit. Cantrips are great. And I think what I like about Anticipate is its versatility. You can see it in play decks like Blue-Black Control, like the kind of control deck that Shaheen is playing. But then you see these mid-range or spell-oriented Jeskai Tokens decks, and they're also interested in Anticipate.
Don't know if this is going to be a 4 moving forward for a lot of decks. We're not going to see a card like Preordain or Brainstorm ever come back to Standard, I imagine. This might be the best that we can do, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah, I think they've gotten away from giving us 1-mana cantrips. They want, you know, if you're going to try to set up your draws, you hopefully will have to pay a real form of investment for it.
Cruse going to sacrifice a fetch land here. Looks like he's going to go searching for a forest, and he will. His creature base, 4 Caryatids, 4 Coursers, 4 Siege Rhinos, 3 Witchwood Elementals, the single Sidisi, and a single Tasigur. And then just a bunch of 1-of Planeswalkers, some removal spells. And not a ton of card draw, actually. Just a couple copies of Abzan Charm and no main deck copies of Wreath of Bones. Depending on how people like to build their Abzan decks, it does vary quite a bit.
It's somewhat of a throwback version, I would think, for these Abzan decks. The 4 Caryatid, 4 Courser, 4 to go with the Rhinos. That's something we saw early on in the format, but a lot of times we saw Abzan decks then become more controlling or more aggro as the format developed, I think.
The way that Cruse has fanned his hand out, I'm not sure if he has a 4th land here.
Yeah, neither player has a 4th. I mean, Brian didn't have a 4th land. Cruse does have a Bio Blight, it looks like, so he won't take too much damage here, but and he has a Siege Rhino in waiting for when he does hit his 4th land.
He did elect to discard for the turn. So Brian's going to play a 4th land. That's a Flooded Strand. See if he has any main phase action. We'll start by attacking. There is Bio Blight. Cruse will have to pay 1 life to cast it thanks to the Llanowar Waste. And actually, discarding might look a little strange there, but perhaps he's trying to set up for his 1-of Tasigur.
Well, a issue of Bio Blighting here is if Brian has a card like Wild Slash, it does give Brian the option to save 2 of his tokens here.
Doesn't look like he has that option, though. So the goblins are going to die. You see Cruse is already down at 12 life, though. And this Jeskai Tokens deck does have a little bit of reach in it.
Yeah, well, I believe Brian has at least 2 copies, if not 3, of Stoke the Flames in his hand.
Might be pretty important for Cruse to draw that 4th land to start the Siege Rhino parade.
Yeah, without the life gain, I mean, Brian has him dead.
Let's see what Cruse does have here. Again, did top 8 our Season 3 Invitational last year. Good friend of Todd Anderson. Those guys, both from the Alabama area, have had a lot of success playing Magic. Todd, the name you're more familiar with, but Cruse, no slouch. Used to be Todd's travel buddy. There is a Sansep Citadel. Does have a Thoughtseize in hand, too. Might be a little risky to cast that, though.
Yeah, so in William's spot, I think the risk of casting something like Thoughtseize is you're trying to think what kind of hand Brian has, that he has all these cards, played a 4th land and didn't play anything. And one of the things that comes to the front of your mind is that Brian's sitting on a lot of burn. So it's still probably good here because even if you're Thoughtseizing a burn spell, you're probably saving yourself life points. And information is good enough at this point, but I think he should be concerned.
Response to the Thoughtseize. Brian going to sacrifice a Flooded Strand, get an island. Looks like he's going to play Raise the Alarm, so 2 soldier tokens on the way here. And also has the ability to cast Stoke the Flames.
Yeah, that's the great part about Stoke, is with your token makers, they don't, they don't affect Stoke's cost at all.
Well, at least 1.
How about 3 Stoke the Flames?
That's a lot of those. Might have some interest in taking 1 of those.
Said it could be trouble. I'm inclined to still think it is.
There goes 1 of them.
Well, Brian has William dead right here. This is going to be, William goes to 10 off the Thoughtseize, 6, swing 4, cast Stoke, 0.
William had better have a spell then.
Yeah, he's going to need something.
Put him to 6. If the ultimate prices, even if the ultimate prices.
Right, because it's a Llanowar Waste, so he'll still take the damage.
Brian will draw. This is pretty straightforward and simple. A lot more simple than I thought it would be. Cruse minor mana issues did not allow him to cast a Siege Rhino. There's the attack. Attempt to put Cruse down to 4.
I mean, Cruse knows what's going on here. Yeah, Murderous Cut, that doesn't actually save him life points here.
Yep. No Urborg in play, so he'll have to take 1 to cast it. Does give a little bit of information away there too.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that play just because he's playing with perfect information and he knows that would happen. So yeah, Brian sees opponent at 4, tapped out, pretty straightforward.
Brian Braun-Duin going to win game number 1 here over William Cruse. Jeskai Token is up a game over Abzan mid-range as we do go to the sideboards. We will start with Cruse. Again, he does have this main deck Sidisi Undead Vizier in his deck, so it allows for some interesting 1-ofs. He does have 2 Thoughtseizes, 2 Duress, a Sorin Solemn Visitor, a Hornet Queen, 2 Glare of Heresy, 3 Drown in Sorrow, a Bile Blight, a Nissa, 2 Nissas, and then another copy of Dramoka's Command. Anything we like here?
Well, I think some of the things that we talked about, cards like Ultimate Price, not really hedging against certain types of creatures. I think he's going to go for his removal package that's better against tokens, which you see in his sideboard. So his Bile Blight, his Drown in Sorrows, I think we'll use those. As far as playing, because he's playing against Jeskai tokens and not against Jeskai midrange, cards like Duress seem pretty well positioned here as well. There's only 8 creatures in Brian's deck. I would assume he'd be using that as well as maybe switching up some of his threats. Sorin Solemn Visitor is higher impact, I think, than some of the other things he's ramping into. You mentioned his Sidisi. I'm not positive William's going to have time to play a 4-6 for 5.
Okay. Other side of things for Brian, he's got 3 Dragon Lord Ojitais, 3 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Negates, 2 Valor Stance, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 Glare of Heresy, and a Singleton Erase.
Well, I'm interested to see whether or not he boards into this copy of Dragon Lord Ojitai. So traditionally how you do board Jeskai in this matchup is you bring in your cards like Disdainful Stroke and Glare of Heresy. Certainly Siege Rhino is one of the more effective threats against you, and you want to make sure you have a game against that. Negate isn't bad either, though William is very heavy on creatures. That might be a liability for Brian to use that. When you think about that, he's going to board into Glares and Disdainful Strokes. That's good enough. But yeah, Dragon Lord Ojitai, this is a new sideboard card, and I figure it should be pretty good against Obs on midrange. And I'd like to see that out of the sideboard from Brian. I'm not sure he'll do it, but I think it's part of his plan.
Well, we'll see how players do want to sideboard here. Interesting matchup, though, kind of the back and forth. It's an interesting game because I think if Will resolves Siege Rhino, he may actually win that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's certainly possible. The life gain was super, super important. It would have, of course, taken care of the problem with the soldiers, but instead his 4th land enters the battlefield tapped and stands up Citadel, and all of a sudden Brian's killing him right away.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, you know, as it is with a lot of burn strategies, if you don't have the lethal part of the lethal amount of burn, it really devalues the rest of the cards in your hand.
Yeah. Well, we will very quickly, before game number 2 is underway, discuss Cardboard Crack. 4 books available. It was only 3, but you guys liked them so much, we brought a 4th one with us.
Yeah, so Cardboard Crack, this is the popular webcomic, I think, that really has taken off in the last year. We did have 3 editions available, but now we do have a 4th one available for you as well. In paperback, they're $12.99 each, and you can learn more about them at starcitygames.com/cardboardcrack.
I follow him on Twitter. You guys should too. Big fan of this webcomic. I wouldn't be surprised if a 5th book would be coming down the pipeline. As we do turn our attention to BBD and William Cruse, game number 2 going to be underway here shortly, and what has been a lot of fun already. We're only into our 3rd round, but it's already been an absolute blast because a brand new format for these players to try to figure out, taking a bunch of new content from Dragonstark here, implementing it here in a very high stakes tournament. Anticipate seems to be the card that most people have gone to that has felt pretty safe.
Right, so that one, I mean, this is interesting because you rarely get a high-level tournament like this on release weekend of a set. You know, there's no previous data to go off of. A lot of times Pro Tours will be the week after release weekend, so you still get some time to test with it. But you're right, there is just nothing to go off of here. So there's a lot of room for players to experiment, and I think Anticipate is certainly the first new card that we're going to see adopted just because it's hard for it to not be good.
Yeah.
It's an ability that we've seen on cards before. You know, you've seen it compared with things like Impulse. But I don't think it'll be the last card we see. There certainly are cards out of Dragons of Tarkir that will affect Standard that we simply haven't seen yet.
I'm looking, I'm waiting. I'm also looking, I suppose that's the correct term to use as well. I'm looking to see who's got like the new deck. Who's someone who got this, who like just sat down for the week, or you know, once the spoilers from Dragonstark here started coming down, and just say, okay, got an invitation to prepare for, and has found something that no one else has. Like, is there a white-black Warriors deck out there that no one has? Has someone found like the right build of red, be it super low to the ground like Boss Sly, maybe even big red? I wouldn't be surprised if a big red deck based around Outpost Siege and Chandra as the card drawing engines could actually be pretty good, because red has a really nice top end right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Red got a lot of new tools. I saw one player trying to play Ascendancy combo, again, dusting that one off thanks to Anticipate.
Okay. That deck could really use that
deck
card.
Would love to have Anticipate in it.
Probably play 8 copies.
Yeah, you'd play all the copies of that.
That deck had some real consistency issues, to say the least. So that could certainly be a helper. That's interesting. Like, that's the kind of deck.
Yeah.
That if someone dusted it off and say, okay, I got Anticipate, I got like this card that no one's talking about. Because if you think about all the content, like articles that people have put out, no one said anything about like Jeskai Ascendancy combo, like the one from way back when.
You were talking like the retraction helix.
Yeah, super way back. Maybe that one got some new tools. Because it's easy to take these 2 decks, Obs on midrange, Jeskai tokens, put some new content in there and move forward. You're not going to find anything too crazy, I think, happen with Obs on midrange, for example. I feel like Will is playing this at ECGC like, it might be okay. It's a pretty powerful effect.
Yeah, finding any card. As long as the 4/6 body is relevant and you have things to sacrifice, which he does. Yep. I mean, sometimes he's not playing Satyr Wayfinder, but he's playing Sylvan Caryatid. You could sacrifice that. That's easy enough.
Jamoka's Command, how bad could it be?
Yeah, Jamoka's Command, that's a card I have a lot of. I think that one's going to be a player.
That's not your style of card, though.
No, I think it's more. It's not. It's got it really works well with creatures. I don't know. But I think Obzon Aggro, for example, is a deck that would really like that card.
Yeah, I think that's where it's going to go immediately. I think that's, I don't know if it's going to be 4 copies or something, maybe 4 throughout the 75, but I think it goes there immediately. Brian going to take a mulligan. It looks like Will's going to keep his hand. Cruse will be on the play. Yeah, it's very green and very white, not very Matthias Hunt.
No, I mean, I'll play green and white if we're ramping into like Tooth and Nail. Like if there's a green white Tooth and Nail deck, I'm okay with that.
Oh, you are the enemy.
That's great.
You are the enemy.
Just that you have to make Jamoka's command playable. You probably have to play 20 creatures.
At least. And they have
to be creatures that like profitably fight things. There's a lot of restrictions which I really don't want to follow.
Way too many creatures for you. I know. Maybe we can anticipate an escape shift. Have we considered that? Maybe not powerful enough?
That's actually interesting. It could be. I mean, I think it's better than Telling Time. I've always disliked Telling Time and Escape Shift. Ugh. But if you're going to play Telling Time, I think now I have another reason to tell people to stop playing Telling Time.
Perfect.
And the new reason is just play Anticipate.
We're going to start things off game number 2 here with a Temple of Malady. Crew's going to scry. We'll see where that top card goes here in just a moment.
Yeah, I think when we looked at Williams' opener, I think his game plan's pretty straightforward here, which is he's going to just try to mash Siege Rhinos into Brian this game.
It's a good plan against Jeskai, always has been. And taking a look at Brian's deck list, he's of course playing Jeskai tokens. Now, there isn't an answer to Siege Rhinos or the mash the Siege Rhino plan in Roast. That is a card that this deck could have access to. You'll find that he actually doesn't have that card. Now, Valor Stance also will work just fine. But
yeah, I think why we don't see the Roast in his deck is because he would be playing it out of the sideboard, and at that point, it's probably just worse than Glare of Heresy. Because there aren't many things you want to roast that are not white.
Sure.
In the format.
Carry at it here from Cruse, so a little bit of acceleration.
I mean, if he's mashing Siege Rhino starting on turn 3, that's all sorts of problems for Jeskai.
Well, Brian had better have an answer here as Cruse does draw a card. Sandstep Citadel in hand, so he has at least one land to play. It looks like there's also a Windswept Heath over there as well. Could be time for Siege Rhinos. Put him to the test right away.
Yeah, he does have the untapped land and Rhinos. Willie may be a little threat light here. And if his Rhinos get countered with Disdainful Stroke, he may be at a disadvantage. So he'll have to decide whether or not he wants to try to play around that. But the payoff is just so big if this works.
Gonna sacrifice the Heath.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think I only play one way. I'm going for it. I don't have any respect for my opponent. You don't have a counter spell. We'll see if Cruse wants to go that way or not.
I mean, if you're playing Obzon, it's because you want to play Siege Rhino.
Yeah.
So you should play Siege Rhino.
Hey, there it is. And it's countered. All right, see? Maybe you should have waited. Would have happened to me too.
He's got another one. I mean, how many Disdainful Strokes does Brian have? I mean, I think he does have a second.
Actually, he does have a second. There's a Temple. Another stroke in hand, pass the turn back. Cruse will draw. Now, I think Cruse also has a copy of Courser in his hand, so he could, play Courser this turn, but he's going to put him to the test. So do you have another one? You do. And that's a real backbreaker.
So playing the second one is I mean, you'd hope if you're willing that you'd have another route to go with. I think he had a copy of Sorin, and he may have been better served just trying for Sorin there.
Perhaps.
It's hard to say, because the turn 3, turn 4 Rhino draw on the play is just about ideal for this matchup.
I just don't think you can pass it up. And I think on the play,
yeah, I certainly think the first one I really like, because then if the first one resolves, then you know that you're green-lighted to go for the second one too. And at that point, you're probably just not losing.
Yeah, and now here's Negate for the Sorin. Yeah, Brian's cards have lined up beautifully here for this game. And this is a hand that Will would never mulligan.
No.
It's
great. Now, so the question is whether or not he wants to play it differently.
Yeah. Which I would be, I don't think that's the case. Like sandbagging it for a turn, maybe try to play around counter magic, because now here's a Treasure Cruise. So everything is going BBD's way now as well. Seeker of the Way is a 3/3. It's got lifelink because of prowess. 3 cards coming. Attack for 3. Will can't block with his 0/3. Now he's going to go down to 16. Brian's going to gain 3.
And what Brian's done a great job of is really turning into the control deck here. And because Williams on Obzon midrange and not Obzon control, this may actually work. Yep. Brian's trading 1-for-1ing and resolving Treasure Cruise. It's a pretty straightforward plan.
And we looked at Cruise's sideboard, and sometimes you'll find versions of this deck that do have a bunch of card drawing in the board. Move towards a card like Read the Bones, more copies of Obzon Charm, but you're not going to find that here. Now, this is a discard spell. Cruise is going to take a look at the hand, say, Treasure Cruise, you got to go. Leave Brian with Anticipate, Stoke the Flames, and a copy of Shivan Reef. So if you're William, you actually have to be pretty happy looking at that hand saying, okay, this isn't the worst thing in the world for me.
Well, it's like, it's not the worst, but it's not the best either. You still can't block Seeker of the Way because Brian can very easily fire off Anticipate. I mean, this Anticipate's really strong, right, in this deck, and I think that hand shows off how.
Yeah, I like it a lot in this deck. I just kind of like the card in general. It's weird because it's not the most powerful card. Like, we're not going to get Impulse or Ponder or Preordain or anything like that back, but I think we've been spoiled with how good those cards have been over the years.
Those cards are just, they're unreal powerful.
Yeah. Now we have like this like weaker Impulse, and I'm sure Dragon.
That was a draw.
That was a good draw step. That's a Dragon Lord Ochitai.
Jeez. I'm wondering if they're going to come in out of the sideboard. The answer is yes.
So this is what I find interesting. I've watched Jeskai Tokens a couple times so far. We watched Dylan Donegan in the round 1. Now we're watching Brian here. And some other players I was walking around the room last round. And most players are just boarding it in, all kind of mimicking what players were doing at Grand Prix Memphis with their Fleetsmane lines in the sideboard. Just saying, I'm boarding it against everyone. Because I don't think people are going to have the appropriate answer to beat this thing. And for what it's worth, this requires a pretty certain answer.
Well, the more, it scales better with the more kill spells your opponent is playing, really.
Yeah.
As the downside is that it's a 5-4 for 5. So if your opponent is putting pressure on you, I could see not wanting it. But a lot of people in their Game 2 decks against Jeskai take out a lot of their pressure. They go for a more controlling route, and Dragon Lord Ochitai is very good there.
Brian will draw, Anticipate, and Stoke in hand. Looks like he picked up a land for the turn. Now the question, of course, is he willing to attack with the Dragon Lord Ochitai? Looks like he might start his turn off with an Anticipate, get an idea of what he's working with. And he will. That'll, of course, trigger the Seeker. It's a 3-3 now with Lifelink. Brian will take a look at the top 3 of cards of his deck. Jeskai Ascendancy got selected real fast.
Yeah, well, it's very powerful here. He has a copy of Stoke the Flames in his hand already.
It's kind of a mini combo in his deck, Dragon Lord Ochitai and Jeskai Ascendancy. It's not perfect, but it's good enough.
Well, it's so powerful with Dragon Lord Ochitai because it actually untaps the creature, which means that Brian can not attack with Ochitai this turn and then just simply have spells left. Like, all his spells save Dragon Lord Ochitai. It's a lot, if you play against the pristine cards, it's that same effect, right? Any spell saves it.
Here's an attack. Seeker of the Way is a 4-4. Dragon Lord Ochitai is a 5-4. This is going to force Cruse to have some sort of removal spells. I mean, right now he's almost forced to have a Hero's Downfall. Something to get this thing off the table. And he does have Dromoka's Command, and oddly enough, Dromoka's Command not looking all that great in this particular situation.
Well, it gets rid of the Jeskai Ascendancy, so it's at least a 1-for-1, but the problem is that William's on the wrong side of the 1-for-1ing matchup. That's been Brian's game plan all along, so by trading away cards, that's playing into Brian's plan.
You see William is not thrilled about how much damage he has to take. He has a Bile Blight in his hand. Perhaps he got a little too creative with the Bile Blight. Not entirely sure. It might be a Sidisi instead. I may be incorrect about that.
Yeah, I believe it's the 4-6, which is his own source of card advantage. It's not terrible, but he's pretty far behind, and these Dragon Lord Ochitai hits are going to be pretty consequential.
He can set up a pretty good turn here. The ability to play Sidisi and then Dromoka's Command could be a pretty nice turn. He's a mana short, but it could be a pretty good turn.
The danger is that even if he needs to be trading, he needs to kill things, but that kill spell plan is poor in the face of Ochitai and Jeskai Ascendancy.
Yeah. And also knowing that your opponent has a 4 damage burn spell in their hand.
Right.
That doesn't seem great either. Because right now it's attack for 9. Cruse could take the 9, go down to 5.
So dangerous though. Then it's not, I mean, 5 isn't 4, so maybe he has to do that.
Let's see what this is going to be. All right, looks like he's going to play the command. So this is going to get a little bit bigger.
Yeah, counter on the carry added and blow up the Jeskai Ascendancy, but he still looks like he has to chump away the carry added.
Yeah. And now he has Bile Blight. Okay.
So that'll actually kill. That'll put the Seeker away from a 4-4 down to a 1-1. And the carry added should kill it.
Okay. I think the issue here is that Cruse just got, it looks like a little too creative with the Bile Blight. Because then he ended up working himself into what ended up being a pretty difficult situation here. See, Dragon Lord Ojai did hit, so as a result, Brian gets to look at the top 3 cards, take one, just gets to anticipate again.
Yeah, I mean, the danger is one of these cards is Valorous Stance, so that's going to be protection for Dragon Lord Ojai, and I don't even think Brian's taking Valorous Stance. Which if he found something better than that in this situation, that's problematic.
That's pretty scary if that's the case. There's a land. It's a Battlefield Forge, pass the turn back. Cruse will take a draw step. There's a Siege Rhino. Never too unhappy to draw one of those.
No, he's good in most situations, and this certainly is one of them. But he's just taking a lot of hits off the Dragon Lord.
Now he's going to play Sidisi and going to exploit. So this is the first time we get to see this in action.
Well, if he wants to get rid of Dragon Lord Ojai right now, he can get Murderous Cut and hope that Brian doesn't have a Valorous Stance. Brian doesn't have blue mana, so there's a chance.
Hope being the key word. Hope often a strategy I'm not a fan of, but it works out here.
Yeah. So now I'm interested to see what Brian kept. He did have the option, as said before, to go get that Valorous Stance to protect the Ojai, but he's on a different game plan.
We're going to finish delving here. We can't forget, too, a 4-6 is no slouch. It's a pretty good clock. Will's got a Siege Rhino in hand. He can close this game out pretty quickly. Though I'm with you. I want to know what Brian kept.
Yeah, losing the dragon seemed pretty important.
Yeah. Especially the option to take Valor Stance there and electing not to. He's going to sacrifice Flooded Strand pretty quickly. Lose 1 to get either a Plains or an Island out of the deck. He's down to 22.
I think it may have just been Treasure Cruise, saying that more cards is more important.
It's a tough decision to make there. Do you want those cards, or do you think that, okay, I'm good enough with this dragon if I have Valorous Stance? Because now it's evident that it is Treasure Cruise.
Yeah.
So 3 cards coming. But this could be 3 blanks.
Well, I guess there's some concern that it doesn't actually get around all the different kinds of removal that Cruse could have. He could, you know, maybe it's Utter End is what we're looking at, for example.
Sure.
Ojai's multicolored, maybe it's getting exiled. Or maybe Brian draws another copy of Ojai and doesn't care.
Hiya! Death Touch, very powerful. In for 4. There's a Rhino. Brian's hand right now is a negate along with the Stoke the Flames. It's 12 to 15.
I mean, Siege Rhino is great at racing.
Brian will take a draw step. Looks like the draw was a raise the alarm. You have to imagine Ojai is going to get in the red zone here.
Yeah, I think the best plan that Brian can do is swing for 5 twice, hopefully, and if you can get a Stoke the Flames in the meantime, that is lethal. He has a raise the alarm and a negate to buy him enough time to do that.
There is Ojai. It'll come across. Crew's going to go down to 7. The trigger from Ojai will allow Brian to look at a couple of cards here.
I believe it was 3 lands.
Well, he selected at least 1 card he's happy with. Temple of Epiphany. He'll rearrange some things. This is a Jeskai Ascendancy.
So once again, he has that ability now just to really save his Dragon Lord Ojai, even using a card like Stoke the Flames.
Looks like he might have a main phase raise the alarm here.
Yeah, so with Jeskai Ascendancy, there's just so much available.
Yeah, I like this. I like playing this in the main phase right now because then you get to draw a discard, you get to untap your creature. You know, you get more information on your draw as well. You feel pretty safe doing it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Has a blocker here for the Sidisi.
Ascendancy, we already knew it was powerful. That's really no surprise, but it has looked dynamic this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really powerful. It's good because the Jeskai tokens deck got some upgrades in the tokens it's playing. Interestingly, Brian's actually just still playing the Raise the Alarms and Outbursts, but it's this interaction between it and Dragon Lord Ojai actually that is pretty impressive right here.
It's actually much better than I thought it would be. I thought it might be a cute interaction that maybe it comes up sometimes, but it's coming up a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, I agree.
The attack with the 2 big creatures, Sidisi and Siege Rhino. Chump blocking a Siege Rhino pretty tough. Will says, I guess you blocked right. Looks like he's going to concede the game. Braun-Duin's going to win this game and match here for William Cruse. 2 games to 0. Jeskai tokens will take care of Abzan mid-range pretty easily, honestly. Though, to Brian's credit, things did line up very, very well for him in that game.
Yeah, it was